So hey guys, I think we got everyone out of the waiting room now. Um, all right, so for those that are listening in, tuning in, whether it's through Zoom or YouTube, welcome to another edition of Tech School. Today we have our friend Brian Shannon coming to speak. He's a VP at ServiceNow, and I'm sure Curling will give him a little bit more of an introduction um, later on. But yeah, we're excited. He's going to come on today and talk about managing rapid growth and everything kind of from his experience dealing with rapid growth in different companies. So we're excited for him to be on today, answer questions, and share some knowledge. We're excited. If you're tuning in from YouTube, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. All those interactions that we get with videos like this help them reach more people. So that like or that comment that you leave on this video could allow it to reach an entrepreneur who really needed to hear something about rapid growth today, right? And really needed that, some keys to help their startup out. So that's an easy, quick way for those of you watching to kind of support the community and help all those startups and entrepreneurs out there. So I'll hand it off to Curling and Brian.
Thanks, Stephen. Brian, I looked at your LinkedIn before, I'm updating LinkedIn and stuff like that. I actually like what it said on the about. Can I read part of the about, just part of it?
Sure.
I love this part where you said the proven executive leader, because that's why I always thought you, when I think about proven, right? It's like you've actually had some experience. And I'll read it off. It said, who over 20 years of pioneering innovative solutions in order to maximize delivery of value in the marketplace, which is crucial. This marketplace is crucial for the startups to understand. Experience in transformation of organizations to high-performing teams that create robust, scalable, and well-designed software systems. Most of us are in this kind of tech sector, so that's why it's really great to hear you. But this part about leading a leader in web and mobile technologies, both B2B and B2C systems. When I looked at that, I said that is actually really great, because sometimes our startups in a lot of ways are in this kind of B2B part, right? So maybe we could discuss a little bit what the difference is at and B2C. Yeah. And we can maybe delve more into that, but I just think your experience is perfect for startups, not necessarily always for this kind of rapid growth, which we'll talk about, but I actually feel like you understanding these different type of lenses, I think is really great. But yeah. I did want to start, Brian, just a little bit about like your beginnings offhand too. Is that fine? And when I say maybe beginnings, it doesn't have to born on.
It all started.
So, we could kind of accelerate even just when you starting with maybe your undergrad part too, because some of these people that are listening are in that undergrad kind of piece too.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I will park a little bit on my childhood just because I did get into technology when I was like 11 or 12. So I did decide when I was about 16 that this is what I wanted to do. For me, building technology was just so rewarding to be able to write some code, and then immediately you can see what you've built. So that was just really satisfying. And but yeah, I did my undergrad at UCSD in computer science, and then got a job, software engineer. I did some internships there as well. So it was, I don't know if you've looked at LinkedIn. I mean, it's kind of I've been told that it's a very, almost an idyllic career path. I will say that early on in my career, I wanted to be like an Uber architect. I wanted to be chief architect of ServiceNow or Google or, some other world-renowned company. And yeah, I decided kind of about 10, 12 years ago that I wanted to move more into that leadership role. And that was based on some encouragement from a mentor, and also just really understanding more about myself and putting on a little bit more of a growth mindset for my own self. So, and then yeah, it's been a wild ride for the last little while.
John was reminding me to make sure some of these stories I get out of you, because you got so many good stories though. But since we're actually talking about rapid growth, what was your first experience of having rapid growth, or just having growth in general, in your experience?
I'd say the first experience with rapid growth, I'm trying to think really far back if it was even any project or something like that, and trying to, I know, understanding your cohort here as well. I'd have to say it really was when in my time at GE, I was with a very late stage startup, I guess. We had about 60 employees, and we were bought by a company called API Healthcare, and then that company was bought by GE. And I will tell you that moving from a 60-person company to a 300,000-person company, and then the requisite growth that we had to do as a result of that, it was an interesting kind of style of rapid growth too, because it wasn't necessarily like you're adding, you're doubling your team size, but you were growing rapidly in the sense of like the process that you needed to implement, the additional people you had to interact with, the budgets and the rigor in which you had to, apply policy and things like that. So that was a ride for sure, a wild ride too.
When we were thinking about even just that experience, I could maybe delve into one of the questions. We always get certain questions from startups in our cohorts, right? And maybe we prepped you on some of them, but was there something that you can just give advisement on? What did you do differently when you were managing these people, right? Maybe your current team or maybe the new team as that rapid growth was happening?
Yeah. So I think as I think about that question, there's sort of different phases that you might be in
Nice.
in your company or your team or anything like that, because it might just be your company, but it might be your team. And so in an early stage team or startup, you're kind of in that formation stage. You're trying things, you're doing trial and error, you're really trying to figure things out. And then you kind of there's also other stages where maybe you're cost cutting or you're shrinking, and that's you manage people differently in that way. And then you might be in a stage where you're just wanting to be steady as she goes. And again, you're kind of creating a process and policy that sort of maintains that over time. So those are some other stages that I think of. But when you're in this growth phase, I'd say the one constant thing is change. That's a kind of a cliche saying, but when you're growing rapidly, it is big change. It is like what you did yesterday is not going to work tomorrow. It's very rapid. So a good example I thought maybe to use here is like performance reviews. 1 year you might, in terms of doing like performance management for your team and telling them how they're doing and things like that. 1 year, 1 year you might be, you don't have any goals set at all. You're just having your one-on-ones with your team, and you're kind of all trying to figure out what to do next. But the next year you say, hey, let's set some goals. And then that year you set some goals and you manage to those goals and those KPIs, but maybe you don't write anything down, or it's a little bit loosey-goosey. And the next year you start to think, well, maybe we should write these things down and have really strong KPIs. And so in rapid growth, most things that you do like that, you don't do it the same way twice. And I'd say your question was really around how do you manage people in that?
Yeah.
So what I personally do, this isn't everything, but really you want to be able to set your expectations to your team. So it's really important to say to your team, hey, things are going to change and rapidly. And so don't get too comfortable. This is how we did it yesterday is not going to be the same as we do it tomorrow.
That's great.
Also set expectations around trying and failing things, the fast failure sort of approach. You're definitely going to be doing that as you grow fast. You want to set an example. So if you're telling your team, hey, be comfortable with change, but then you're not, that's tough. Really tough. And then another thing is, because so much change is occurring, you really want to set focus for your team, because there's going to be 20 different things you could focus on and change as you're trying to meet your goals for the year. And so really providing that focus is extremely important. So that'd be kind of some things. I think as I'm talking, there's other things coming to mind, but I'll pause there.
No, that's good. I like how you actually talk about the phases. I even like how you went into some of the tactical things about these one-on-ones. I was just talking with a cohort right now with Sunny and Brent about having one-on-ones with their new team.
Yep.
So that would be great. I might even delve into that later, but there's that one question we had too on like what type of metrics, right? Because like you said, everything's changes is going to be the only thing that's constant. But is there some metrics or something that you can use to kind of indicate this growth or indicate what phase you're in? Since you've been using phases, what do you think about that? Is something that you use as a leader?
Yeah, I think, I think you start with outcomes, certainly. So what outcomes are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to grow your top line revenue? Are you trying to have more net new customers as opposed to having your current customers buy more? Do you have quality problems and you're trying to improve those over time? It somewhat depends on where you're at, but if we're talking, I guess, and so, things like that, there's obviously the raw, like how sales numbers and productivity numbers and things like that you can do. I'd say that maybe to key off of the focus areas, especially when it comes to maybe startups, is really understand where your resources are going. And I use the word resources in the sense of like not only dollars but time. Where is that going? Because where you put your resources, something will happen. It may not be good, but something will happen. And so really keying off of where that's going is important. So for me, my team now is 400 plus, and what I'm looking at is where am I investing, and I know that where I'm investing, that's going to have hopefully a good effect on making some more progress for our customers in that area. So I'd say, that's some advice, I guess, about how you might track some metrics around there. It's so I'd definitely start with outcomes. And then based on those outcomes, form metrics around those outcomes that will tell you whether or not you're succeeding or not there. And then figure out where you're actually putting your investments. So manage your resources and then track it over time.
No, I like that. I like how you always give these little concrete ones, right? These little concrete tips. We do always get questions from CEOs at this point, like, Curling, is there something that I can read? Is there like an article you can give me right now to prepare for that? We just got Series A funding, right? Like what would you want, right? And I direct them to a few different things, but just from your experience, has there been certain things that affected you or allowed you to be more prepared for these phases that you're going to go to with rapid growth with your company?
I'd say one of the books that I've read recently, really, I kind of knew the concept, but I read it, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Nice.
It's very, very well known, but it is such a great book in terms of putting you in the mindset that you need to grow a company into something great. Because if you have that fixed mindset and you put yourself in a box, you put your product in a box or anything like that, that's where, in the startups that I've seen that's failed or companies that have failed, that's usually where they go awry, because they really become myopic and they get in a box and they narrow-minded and they don't see that. It makes them incapable of seeing what's actually going on out there and then adjusting to the changing market conditions or customer feedback or whatever the case may be.
That's great. That's great. And it's been around for a while. I haven't read it, so I'm putting it up. But
what I love about the book too is that it helps you in your life. It changed my parenting, for example. I can bring my daughter. She's around here somewhere. I could bring her in, and she'd be like, "Yep, my dad talks about mindset and growth mindset," and
So that's for all the parents out there. It's good. It's a little bonus.
Husband-wife relationships, significant other, whatever, any relationship.
That's great, Brian. Stephen, I know you had a few questions you wanted to talk to Brian on.
Yeah, I know that we had a few questions that we thought would be good from a few startups. Yeah. So Brian, a quick question for you. Is your approach to growth different, or I guess rapid growth in general? Is it different if your end game as a founder is to exit the business or to, ultimately, sell whatever you and your team have built? Does that change kind of your mindset towards rapid growth? Is it different if it's, if you're holding a different kind of mindset in there?
Yeah, I think so, because as you're looking for an exit or selling, you are, like I talked about before in terms of the metrics and goals, that could potentially make that a bit more clear, although it depends. It could be something like, I want to work and grow on this in 3 years, and then whatever the valuation is at the end of 3 years, then I want to exit. It could also look like, I'm really good at the first 2 years of a startup, but subsequent to that, I'm not as good just because it's not as fun for me, or I'm just not interested, or whatever the case may be. And I want to exit because of that. Or it could be I want to reach a certain valuation so that I can do other things, or go into another business. So it kind of depends. And then based on that exit goal or exit strategy, then you're going to adjust your metrics and KPIs, based on how you want to grow. So it's like, if I've seen companies out there, I haven't been a part of this, but I've seen companies out there that, they want to exit through acquiring other companies. So these are obviously not, brand new startups, but they're acquiring other companies to grow their top line revenue to then sell that conglomerate to another company. In the case of private equity firms, they'll buy a company and they'll have some sort of target of growth. They'll say, we want to grow this business by 20%. Therefore, they very, very almost pedantically go and target a certain part of the customer base that has the most white space to go after and pull in, and then they get there and then they sell the company. So it definitely depends. And then, like I mentioned before, like, depending on your KPI, you're going to adjust where your growth strategy is. So if for example, I want to improve the quality of my software because we want to sell it. Let's say my exit strategy is, I want a certain valuation, but I also want, I need a certain amount of quality so I can sell it, sell the opportunity. Well, then maybe for that last year before I sell the company, I invest in some quality engineers, or I invest in, a very high level architect to help me architect a system that can then bring up some more quality before I sell the business. So, and then you would experience growth there because you're hiring a bunch of folks to then help you grow.
Awesome. Thank you. I do have a follow-up question too. So just in general, in terms of growth and rapid growth, what are some key things that you personally think about when trying to establish, let's say, a model for growth that that is repeatable, scalable, profitable things that we're worrying about as founders, right?
Well, just make sure it's repeatable, scalable, and profitable, and then you're done, right? No. It sounds so easy, but it's tough. I'd say one question that I've been asked several times over the years is, what is strategy? And one of the answers I give, strategy is more than just what I'll say now, but this is one of the answers, is that strategy is a framework for decision making. It is a way that you communicate to your team how you want them to make decisions that are in their purview. So it may not be things like, which direction do we go in the market, maybe as a CEO, because that's really up to you to decide. But you might want to, it reminds me of like Google's do no harm sort of thing, where someone can actually make a decision based on that principle. And so I think establishing that model, that makes it sort of consistent. If you have some of those mantras that you have at ServiceNow, we have hungry and humble. So stay very hungry about what we want to do next and how we want to grow, but also stay very humble about where we are now and our roots and all that. And that actually creates some decision making that goes on, which is really cool. So what does that actually look like? What it looks like is you actually write it down. I've seen organizations where they have this strategy and it's sort of a culture almost, but they don't write it down. It's not clear that that's actually how you should make decisions. So definitely write it down. What are the principles by which you live by? And I'm sure you've heard that before. That's very important in establishing a company. And then I would also say establish clear boundaries. Like you can go over this line, you can't go over that line. I know there's software companies out there that have 0 bug policies. So that would be an example of a boundary where you have, we are not allowed to release with bugs at all. That'd be an example of one. And then I would say that you do want to, as much as you can in order to kind of make it scalable and repeatable, is that you do want to try to automate some things, I guess, or make them as automatable as possible. So in other words, if you have some process by which you are going to market with a new feature in a software product, for example, you have some maybe automated checks where you are checking for like third-party libraries that snuck in there, and you want to make sure that your licensing is all okay for those libraries, let's say. So that you're not releasing something that all of a sudden a company is going to go claim that they have some copyright rights to. So that's trying to automate some of those things as much as you can. I know I'm talking with maybe some very small startups, so that seems somewhat untenable, but I would say another way to look at automation is to have some standards around how you, I guess, document and release or progress things. So for example, you might have a spreadsheet that shows your budget, how you do budgeting. So you have a very standard template on how you do budgeting, as opposed to a random template that, so-and-so uses that one and so-and-so uses that one, and it's unclear and all that, right? The more clarity you can provide, the more things you write down, the more consistency that you provide and discipline around that, the more over time that you can scale and it's repeatable and then profitable is kind of maybe a different question, but maybe it leads to efficiency and sort of that, but that's maybe a little more about what market you go after. And yeah.
That's great. We got some more questions on the chat, Brian.
Cool.
I feel like, John, do you unmute yourself? You could, if you want to ask Brian directly.
Sure. I was just wondering, sort of just some general leadership things, like how do you encourage innovative ideas?
Hi, Joanna.
Hi.
First of all, gotta say hi, yes. Like we don't know each other or something.
Right.
So the question was, yeah, hello.
Here
So
I am.
yeah, good. So the question was, how do we encourage innovative ideas in a team? Yeah, so one big thing I think for a leader is to be an example. I've seen leaders that when someone brings an innovative idea forward, they just squash it immediately and humiliate the person, and in public. Don't do that. Even if you think the idea is terrible, even if, and that certainly happened to me, where someone had an idea and I'm like, ooh, that's probably not going to work. But especially in a public forum, you want to encourage innovation. So even the bad ideas are okay. There's all the famous thing, Thomas Edison finding 4,000 ways to not make a light bulb before he finally found one. So yeah, so really encouraging that. I would say there's other ways to also practically do that within your teams. So I have done things like I've had innovation days where we have once a quarter we'll have innovation day where teams can work on whatever they want. Google is very famous for their 20% time. I haven't done that in my teams. I haven't, that model never worked with the culture and never worked with the schedule and things like that. We've done hackathons. So for me though, in terms of innovation, I think of innovation a bit more broadly than maybe others do. I want my engineers to be innovative in everything that they are doing. So the solutions that they are providing to fix a bug, I want them to have an innovative mindset on that, because it's going to help them to come up with a solution that is hopefully more elegant than just fixing the bug, and one that helps our customers, doesn't break our customers, doesn't, you know what I mean? Like that to me, there's the big ideas, which are important, but I think I want to drive innovation through everything that we do.
You want me to keep going, Carly?
Yeah. One more question, John. That was great.
What are some things that you do to sort of motivate your team when they're working on bug fixing and some of the yuckier stuff?
Well, first of all, I say, man, that sucks. Because, I mean, you don't want to, I mean, yeah, I do have teams that sometimes have to do that. And you just acknowledge it that, yeah, the work that you're doing right now is not elegant. It's not, it's not something you might choose. And just by kind of acknowledging that and empathizing with that team, but then coming in with an attitude, like I said before, of kind of innovation, like, hey, some of these are really important for our customers, really connecting them with the customers and the customer pain that they might be experiencing at that time. It's also another way to kind of help motivate when teams are doing something that may not be as sexy and awesome as the next best thing or the next big thing. So yeah, I'd say there's other things you can do, like, I mean, yeah, have team lunches and celebrate successes and do those sorts of things. But I'd say the thing that really has helped is just acknowledging it, making sure that they understand that they can be innovative in that space and connect them with the customer viewpoint. I think that tends to work pretty well on defect teams or maintenance teams.
Yeah.
That was a great question. I know this is tech school, so we do talk a little bit about other things like tools maybe that you use in this kind of these phases of I guess managing growth. Is there some tool that you kind of relied on, or maybe multiple tools you've relied on as to manage this growth? And it could be just a simple tool, but
yeah. I think so. Tools like Rally, Jira, those were super helpful when it comes to project management and whatnot. Kind of gets to also the point around automating things, so making sure that you're automating your workflow. ServiceNow, actually, we have a great platform.
That's true. That's good.
That helps you automate workflows. So we actually we drink our own champagne. We use a lot of that. Excel is a great tool, honestly. If you have templates that I'm a big fan of using templates within Excel. And what I mean by templates is just that you have sort of this master way of doing like a project proposal, or you have a master way of doing a project plan, or some sort of templatized, consistent way of doing things, so that as you grow, because think of it, if you're, let's say that you're a CEO of a startup and you are, let's say you have a small team at now, but you get an infusion of, Series A, Series B, something like that, and you got to go hire 20 people. And all of a sudden you realize, oh man, I cannot manage all this. I'm one person, I just can't manage all this. I need to hire someone who can help me. It's much better to be able to then have something for that person to say, hey, here's how we do project proposals. Here it is. As opposed to, it's in my head. We kind of randomly code some things, or we randomly build some things, or whatever it is, and then try to write that down later. I mean, you can do that, but it's I would say once you get into that mode, you want to write that down, because then it's something that you can repeat and scale over time. I'm trying to think of other tools. I mean, from a software perspective, I mean, tools that help you with builds and automated testing is massively important for those of you who are starting software companies. Oh, please build test into your product from the beginning. It is so much easier when you build tests from the beginning. I know it does take a little bit longer to begin with. It does. However, when you are 2 years from now needing to rewrite a whole portion of your software, or or switch out an aspect of the technology, it is an absolute lifesaver. I don't know if you can tell, I'm speaking from experience on both sides of not having done it and then having done it, and it's just totally night and day. Helps you scale too, right? So those types of tools. So there's the standard ones, Jenkins and the X unit type testing and all that sort of stuff. But even other tools that maybe help in managing your growth. I mean, I don't know if there's any, there's like an offer outside of just standard ones like that. Yeah, there's no magic wand.
No, those are really good.
Yeah.
Is one thing, Brian, that you always well, I know you came to our cohort before and you talked about leadership, right?
Yep.
And I think as you're doing growth, I mean, maybe these phases, your leadership maybe changes.
Yep.
Maybe, right? When you have a small team, could you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Maybe, all right.
Yeah.
You always have great wisdom on that, on leadership, though.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of. I think I gave this some thought, knowing this is a subject today.
Yeah.
About how my leadership has changed with the different teams. I would say that when you're managing rapid growth and you're really, because I know even ServiceNow and others are in the same boat, is that you have these pretty rock solid targets. Like you've got to hit dates. And so for me, what I've done is really figured out a way to hold my teams accountable. Kind of to the point I made earlier about like creating a framework. So the one thing I say to my teams is I say, whatever you commit to, you must deliver it. But you are the ones that kind of come up with the commitment. So it's not Brian saying, you must deliver these specific things by this specific date. It's a partnership with my team, so that, and I challenge them, of course I do, right? You don't just like willy-nilly say, okay, we'll take 10 years to do this. But once the team commits though, they have to meet those commitments, and you hold them accountable. And holding them accountable means things like you might have to part ways with folks, you might have to move people out of roles, you might have to, you really have to signal that you really mean business. Otherwise, if you have targets like that and you miss them and you're kind of like, oh, well, let's try again later, that can definitely stifle your growth big time.
That's great. And I know probably you can go deeper stories on that one too, but I'm gonna open. Stephen, do you have any final thoughts or final questions for Brian?
I don't. I think the list that we had from the startups and stuff, I think we covered most of those and covered kind of those topics. So I'm good. I don't posted a number here.
I can elaborate more too and take up time, but I'm trying to be succinct as I.
We're right on time, Brian. We're doing good. I think I alluded to the fact that we wanted to have this like little small segment where we say to you, what are like one or two tips you would give on rapid growth to a little Brian, right? Yep. One or two tips. Yep. So that's succinct. Maybe this is a good time to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So they sent me the question beforehand, so I didn't have time to think about it. So, but the one is cultivate a growth mindset, big time. Like that one is huge. I mean, even early in my career, I thought I couldn't be a leader. I didn't think I was born with it, those skills. And then I since learned, wait a second, no, like almost everything in life, it's a skill that you develop and then you grow. And so that really helps you not only in your own growth as a CEO or a software engineer or a technologist, but it also helps you just in life. So the second one is really around creating, I didn't talk too much about this, but create ruthless customer focus. Your customers are your growth engine. I talked a little bit more about like process, policy, standards, expectations, things like that as a leader. But when you think about what your growth engine is, your customers are your growth engine. I've recently been taken to kind of studying those companies that really get both the customer and the employee thing right, so to speak.
Yeah.
Really looking at that, and really the truth of the matter is those go hand in hand. And if you think about successful companies, successful startups, long-term successful companies, I mean, customers are definitely at the heart of what they do. And you can really tell that those companies really do value their customers. They don't just say the customer's always right or the customer's number one, but they really do prove that out and kind of believe that with action. And then for me, I would almost say your employees or those that work for you are another set of customers. So those are, those are the ones that are almost internal customers to your leadership and to other teams and all of that. Those would be 2 tips: cultivate a growth mindset and create some ruthless customer focus.
That was great. I know I didn't give you a lot of time to talk about ServiceNow, but is there anything that's coming up in near future that you want to give a little highlight that you guys are doing, or any conferences or anything?
Yeah, we did our knowledge conference back in May, and that's all online. We did a full online conference. It was massive. We usually have about 22,000 attendees in person. And then I think this time, goodness gracious, I even forget what the number was, but some hundreds of thousands of registered, people and whatnot. You go check it out online. Definitely those interested in any sort of ServiceNow development, you can go to developers.servicenow.com and you could go there, register, you get a free instance and you can play around with it and do all sorts of stuff and you can build products on there and and then of course we're hiring, so we're hiring.
No, that's great. Thanks for talking with some of our engineers, Brian, in that time. Well, I think this is a great discussion. I feel like it could be a series. It could be a part 2. I would like to get into a little deeper thing on the leadership part, because I know that's always helpful for these young CEOs as part of our cohort. I think that's crucial. But I just want to thank you, and I'll let Stephen wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you coming on. I know we're all, thankful to listen into you today and have to answer questions. I know, Curling and I especially, we learned a lot today. I know Curling's heard a lot of your stories before, but yeah, it's great for you to be able to share some knowledge and give some actionable steps for all the startups and entrepreneurs that are listening.
Awesome.
So I know you mentioned earlier on, about halfway through here, you mentioned a specific book. So I'm going to put a link to that book in the video description when we post this on YouTube. So for those of you listening, if you want to check it out, I'll put it in there so you guys have some resources. But yeah, thanks for coming on. That's another episode of Tech School. Just to reiterate, I guess what was said at the beginning. For those of you that are watching this, recording on YouTube, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. All the interactions that happen with these videos allow them to reach more people, right? So that like or that comment that you leave could push this video out to an entrepreneur that really needed to hear this message, right? There could have been something said, by Brian, a little tip, little key that really resonated with them and helped them out a lot. So that's an easy way for those of you watching to be able to support the community, support all the entrepreneurs and startups out there. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in for another edition of Tech School. Take care.